One of the other initial books in the Berger Books launch is Incognegro, which it initially was a graphic novel at Vertigo a decade ago.
Correct.
And it's being revived now with a new series. This is a book whose subject matter is obviously relevant now.
Absolutely.
In the current day with the divisiveness and all the conversations about race that we're having now. Tell me about bringing that book back and reviving it. Because you're also doing a re-release of a remastered edition of the original graphic novel, along with the new series.
Exactly, yeah. Incognegro got so much acclaim when we published it as a graphic novel at Vertigo. And when I was starting Berger Books, I had been in touch with Matt Johnson and Warren Pleece about doing something else with Incognegro. I knew I was going to come back into comics. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to land, but I was actually developing a prequel miniseries to Incognegro with Matt and Warren at a very slow pace. And then Berger Books sort of happened very quickly. It was like, great, I have an instant book, and they had gotten the rights back to the graphic novel, which was awesome. So I was able to, you know, when I was speaking to Mike Richardson about starting a line, I said Incognegro was going to be one of the first books, and isn't it great I have a ready, set, go graphic novel as well as a new miniseries that explored the character at the very beginning of his career and of his mission that wound up his mission of passing as a white man in order to investigate crimes against black people. And that's essentially what the premise of the character is. I mean, the graphic novel takes place in pre-civil rights South, I think it's late 1940s, early 1950s. It's never really said.
Like vaguely referenced.
Right, but it's definitely before the before the civil rights era, where lynchings were still happening, and the protagonist of this series, Zane Pinchback, is a very light-skinned black man, and he's a reporter. And there were true cases of light-skinned black men who could pass as white and who did go down to the South. Walter White, who was one of the founders of the NAACP, actually did that. And it's funny that, I always throw this in, but Walter White is also the name of the Bryan Cranston character, Breaking Brad, exactly. Whenever I say this on panel, people like give me a strange look. I'm like, it's true. But anyway, so the story is very, very loosely based on a Walter White-ish kind of character. And then Matt Johnson himself, the writer, is biracial, and he has twin daughters, and when they were born, one daughter was born Caucasian, and one daughter was born African American. So he kind of felt like the story wrote itself from there, how just through the lens of, or just through the chance of genetics, the whole lens of race and identity is explored through watching how his children are perceived in the world. And so Incognegro itself really got a lot of attention, and when it came out, and this was when it first came out as a graphic novel, it was when Obama was first elected. And when we came back to do the prequel, which has the character in Harlem on his first case, where he decides it's a murder mystery where he's takes place during the Harlem Renaissance, where arts and music, particularly with African Americans, was really sort of the toast of the town. And there was an appreciation finally of what black citizens of America could contribute, and that was actually a very kind of big literary happening in the time. So in Incognegro, the protagonist is invited to a book party, which was kind of scandalous because there were actually African Americans invited to a book party of a white novelist. So they're actually the mixing of the races. So it was sort of a big deal then. And there's a murder of a black writer at the party, and the police don't really care. The police deem it a suicide, and they don't really want to investigate it. So that's the impetus for our character to say, okay, well, I'm going to investigate this now. His friend says, you know, you're pale enough. You can pass as white. You always say you want to do something. Now here's your chance. So this is sort of his first case. And what is so wonderful about releasing this series now is, as you were saying before, you know, with the divisiveness in the country that has always been there, but it's even greater now than it's ever been. And it's so relevant to be putting out this book now. And I'm really happy that I'm publishing this series.